G'day and welcome to the 25th and final, at least for now, episode of Travel Pointers, the podcast for Australian frequent flyers. It's the 29th of December 2025 and I'm Wilson McTaggart, a writer at AFF and AFF admin, and I'm joined for the last time today by Matt Graham, who's been the editor of Australian Frequent Flyer since 2015 but is now finishing up in this role at the end of the year. Before Matt moves on to bigger and brighter things, we thought this podcast episode would be a great opportunity for him to impart his knowledge on how the loyalty landscape has changed over his time at the helm of AFF's editorial content, as well as some tips and tricks that he's learned over the years. We'll get to that shortly, but first, AFF has just updated its point valuations for both frequent flyer and bank programs. What changed since last time?
Yeah, so if you recall, we did an episode, I think, a few months back, Wilson, where we talked about the methodology that went into the AFF frequent flyer point valuations and the bank program valuations. I believe going forward, AFF and also Point Hacks is going to update the valuations every quarter. Point Hacks now is going to adopt the AFF model. Turns out it's pretty sophisticated and well thought through, and yeah, that'll be updated every quarter. But the most recent valuation update was this month, and there's been a few kind of interesting movements. Probably the biggest one is that. If you recall last time, Wilson, Qantas point was ranked as being worth a little bit more than a velocity point, and that's changed. Velocity points are now worth, according to our model and the valuation, more than Qantas points. And it's not really surprising to see when you consider that Qantas devalued its program in August of 2025. They've increased the number of points you need for most of their redemptions. The carrier charges on premium cabin long-haul flights also went up. Upgrade costs went up. So it's not surprising to see that that's happened. Also, the value of a KrisFlyer mile dropped just slightly because of the small devaluation that KrisFlyer made in November of 2025. And we've also added one new frequent flyer program. Atmos Rewards it just launched in August, so it's a new program. It's the combined loyalty program of Alaska Airlines and Hawaiian Airlines. We've added that, and it's actually jumped straight to the top of our valuations, with one Atmos reward point being worth 2.5 Australian cents on average. And that's kind of a reflection on the fact that you can redeem Atmos Rewards points on Qantas, as well as all of the oneworld airlines and many other niche partner airlines like Icelandair, for example, Condor in Germany. There's a really interesting list. I think Philippine Airlines is coming very soon as well. Not there yet, but it will come soon. And the redemption costs are very reasonable. Like, you can fly Qantas on any route up to 1,500 miles in distance, and it's 7,500 Atmos Rewards points in economy, 10,000 for premium economy, or I think 15,000 for business class. And Atmos Rewards also does not pass on Qantas carrier charges. You just pay a $12.50 US partner booking fee if you use Atmos Rewards points to book on a partner airline. So that's a bit of a surprise, I think. And in terms of the bank program devaluations, the main changes were CommBank Awards is now in last place because CommBank they basically, in October, they ditched all of their international transfer partners, and you now have the option either to spend your CommBank Awards points through the CommBank Awards store or transfer them to Velocity. They had over a dozen partner airline transfer partners before, and hotel partners as well, so they're all gone. So it's not surprising to see CommBank Awards now in last place. And the value of an Amex point did drop a little bit because of the Amex membership rewards devaluation earlier this month. They've increased the number of points you need to transfer to certain international partners and dropped Thai Airways as a partner. They did also add Everyday Rewards as a partner. But yeah, that's the value has come down a little bit, but Amex membership rewards does still rank well compared to the other Australian bank programs. So it's still overall a decent option. Have I missed anything, Wilson?
No, that's pretty much it. I think the Amex point or Amex devaluations, I guess we expected it to hit Amex maybe a little harder, but the reality is if you can transfer your points to multiple different programs, you're still going to be able to get value. And yes, I've seen a lot of, I guess, panic transfers or forced transfers to programs like Qatar, Privilege Club, or Cathay, just to try and take advantage of the better transfer rates. But it's still not all doom and gloom. Amex points are still a viable way to go in your point collection strategy because you can access foreign programs with very reasonably priced awards.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I found surprising in the recent round of point valuations, when I had a look at the raw data, the value that you get when redeeming a Qantas point for a business class trip to Europe is really poor. Like it's much worse than it was last time, and frankly, what it should be. And this is a comment I made also to Robin Ironside, who covered this in the News Corp papers, but the value of a Qantas point when you redeem for a round trip business class award from Sydney to Frankfurt, which is the route that we looked at in the valuations, is now on average you're getting about 1.57 cents per Qantas point, which is about the average valuation of a Qantas point, or even slightly worse. You get better value redeeming for domestic flights compared to business class to Europe nowadays, which seems illogical, but here we are. I mean, and the reason for that. I mean, Wilson, you can probably expand on this more than I can, because you put together the raw data. But I believe it's because of the really high number of points and the high carrier charges.
Yeah, so obviously Qantas increased the points required for pretty much all redemption, but especially for premium cabin redemptions. In this case, the airline we used was Emirates for Sydney to Frankfurt, because that was the one that had availability. Other options would have been Sri Lankan Airlines from Sydney to Frankfurt via Colombo. And if we could find business class return availability on Cathay or Japan Airlines, then we would have used it. But there's not a single instance on the Qantas website, so we can't use that.
Yeah, but Sri Lankan did have availability, right?
Yeah, Sri Lankan did have availability, but when we compare airfares, we look at obviously the cash cost of the airfare that the airline's offering. And so Sri Lankan's airfares, you can find a lot of airfares for Sri Lankan flights about $6,500 for business class from Sydney to Frankfurt, which is not terrible. But obviously this impacts on their cents per point value compared to Emirates, who's charging closer to $10,000 than not for their flights to Frankfurt. So even though the carrier charges and points required are still higher, Emirates provides better cents per point value than Sri Lankan.
Yeah, and I guess because Emirates had a lower points cost, and even though the carrier charges were much higher, the fare was also even more higher. I think the carrier charges on the taxes and charges on a round trip Emirates business class ticket from Australia to Europe are about $4,000.
Yeah, I think 3,850.
Do you remember back in the day when these used to be free flights? When you used your points?
I'll admit that I was perhaps not young enough.
No.
This some of our older listeners maybe.
This is before my time as well, and I was probably in preschool back when they introduced taxes for the first time on these frequent flyer reward tickets. But we will talk a little bit later in this podcast about how the loyalty industry has changed in the last decade. Taxes and carrier charges go beyond the introduction of those go beyond the last decade. So, but yeah, it's a different system to what it was in, say, the late 90s or the early 2000s for sure. But Wilson, I just wanted to say you've done a great job. We put together these point valuations together, and we've had them checked by experts as well from Point Hacks as well before we updated the latest round. But you've done a stellar job. You created a very, very sophisticated spreadsheet model, and you've been very careful with updating those numbers and making sure that everything's correct and pointing out issues. So thank you. You've done a really good job, and I'm sure these valuations will continue to hold the airlines to account for many years to come.
No, thank you, Matt. I couldn't have done it without your input, of course, as well, especially explaining the model to everyone. It would have been a jumbled mess of notes otherwise. So, no, it's been fun. I think we both enjoyed working on this project as well.
Yeah, and I couldn't have done it without your Excel skills. I would not have been able to build the very sophisticated, detailed spreadsheet that you did. So, it's been a combined effort. Appreciate your help with that.
So, Matt, you've obviously seen a lot of change in the loyalty landscape in your time as AFF editor over the past 11 years. I know a lot of people have become disillusioned with loyalty programs in that time. So, in your opinion, how has it changed, and are we truly seeing the death of the points game?
Well, I mean, certainly many things have changed in the last 11 years is the time that I've been AFF editor, but certainly since the inception of frequent flyer programs in the 1980s. I mean, what we see today is nothing like what the programs used to be. One of the things I think that has become harder is earning points through credit cards. Now, that's not to say that you cannot get value out of credit cards, and you absolutely still can. And especially if you live in Australia, you can get a lot more value than what you can in a lot of other countries where credit card offers are just not what they are in Australia, and the ability to earn valuable frequent flyer points on credit, everyday credit card spend just isn't what it is. But it is true that churning has become a little bit harder. Like we're seeing a lot more offers now that require you to keep the card open for a second year in order to get the full sign up bonus. And with some of the recent offers, in fact, the extra bonus points you get for keeping the card open for a second year are substantial and really make it worth keeping the card open for longer. We've got now the proposed changes to the RBA interchange fees that could, depending on the outcome of that, from July 2026, we could see a substantial reduction in the points earned on everyday spend on credit cards, or increase in fees, things like that. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. That would be a shame, but it's kind of inevitable. A lot of the bank offers now no longer have expiry dates as well. It's been an interesting change. They just sort of come and go. They don't have a fixed expiry date. And there's one credit card provider that we've seen, and there's a lot of reports of this on the Australian Frequent Flyer Forum, that appears to now be starting to reject applications from people that where they see that they have a credit history that matches the profile of a churner. So banks are starting to crack down on what has been one of, if not the most I guess cost effective and quick ways to earn a lot of frequent flyer points for not a lot of outlay. But that's not to say that that it's dead. I definitely don't think it's dead, and you can still obviously get a lot of value from frequent flyer points. And just like in life, in the frequent flyer points game, and we have to remember it is a game at the end of the day. We can't get too angry about when things change. You've just got to play the game, because when one door closes, another one opens. Like we've seen, for example, again, there's many examples of this, and I talked a little bit about this at the AFF gathering in Melbourne last month for anyone who was there. But like when I started out at AFF, my first job was to write ebooks for what was then called the Frequent Flyer Knowledge Center, and that became Frequent Flyer Solutions and sort of evolved from there. But one of my earlier ebooks was how to earn points paying tax to the ATO by credit card, and the advice then was to pick a credit card that would sort of give you the highest earn rate of the ATO. Back then, when you paid tax to the ATO by credit card, it was a new thing. I think the ATO had only introduced the possibility to pay by credit cards a few years before this, and most banks still awarded full frequent flyer points for government payments. So you could really pick and choose between the different cards that awarded points to the ATO. Then one by one, the banks started to change their terms and conditions to say that you don't get points for government payments. And slowly that's become a kind of a niche thing that only a few of mainly the Amex cards at a reduced rate, or the business credit cards, still give you the option to earn points for direct credit card payments to the ATO. And I know a lot of people have used that as a way, people with like businesses with large tax bills, for example, have used that as a way to accumulate lots of points. Nowadays, that door is largely closed, but there's a whole bunch of payment platforms that have emerged. Pay.com.au, which is affiliated with AFF and PointHacks, is it is the biggest one now, and it's got quite an impressive, and this is just my personal opinion, it's got quite an impressive list of transfer partners now, where you have the ability to pay your bill, earn full points on your credit card, and also collect pay rewards points, which you can transfer out to a whole range of different frequent flyer programs. I recently transferred a bunch of mine to United to book to the United Mileage Plus program, to book just a one-way flight from Palau to Manila, which, believe it or not, is a route that United flies twice a week on a 737. It was 15,000 United miles and no taxes at all, zero taxes or charges. That fare would have been over $800. So, and I'm sure a lot of AFF members who've been around for a while will also remember any seat awards, the JASs, or the MASs and the FASs, and like so the JASs was a J for business class, and then ASA any seat award. That was back when you could redeem Qantas points at the classic award rates, but still earn status credits as if it's a paid booking. This kind of died just before I started in my role as AFF editor in 2015. But that was like people used that to basically go on points based status runs to earn platinum status, and they were very good deals at the time. That died, but in 2020 Qantas introduced Points Club, and if you get to Points Club you get the ability to earn status credits on classic reward tickets, which is not quite as lucrative as the JASs, but still a good deal if you're in Points Club and you're using points to fly Qantas. And I remember back in sort of the early 2010s and 2000s, there was quite a few ways that people were, quote unquote, manufacturing spend or manufacturing points. So they would, for example, there'd be sort of loopholes where you could pay one bill using, pay off a credit card using another credit card in an indirect way. I'm very, very much simplifying this, but you could basically just pay yourself in a loop and continue to accumulate points at every step of the loop. Most of those, or I think all of them, I'm not really aware of any that still exist, have been shut down now. And I mean, fair enough. But that was a way that people were using to sort of indirectly buy points. Nowadays, a lot of airlines actually just sell you the points at a couple of cents per point. They often have promotions even where you can get points at 100% bonus or 50% off or whatever it might be. And there's also things like the Qantas wine bonus point offers when you buy a case of wine. I mean, I just bought a case last week. The case came with 25,000 bonus points. The case cost around about $500, and then I used a $50 voucher that I got from being Points Club member to get $50 off that, so it came to about $450. It's less than 2 cents per Qantas point, and I'm sure I'll be able to redeem those for good value. And there's many other examples of ways that the market has adapted as things have changed, and as one door closes, others open, and people. I mean, even when frequent flyer programs make changes or close loopholes as well, often other programs will come along with new loopholes, and it's just a matter of knowing where to look. And AFF, being part of that community definitely helps with that, because you've got a whole team of people who are looking for these loopholes, and you can sort of share notes and things. So I do think the quote unquote golden era of frequent flyer programs may have passed. I hope not, but I think I'm happy that I did get into it when I did. Got into it in sort of the 2010s, just as I was finishing school, and I just wanted to be able to travel. Well, I just wanted to be able to travel. I wasn't rich. I had no real means to do it. And frequent flyer points made international travel possible for me when I really wouldn't have been able to do it without that. And I'm very grateful for that. And that's something that would not have been an option for me if I was growing up in many other countries. So I'm very grateful for that. I think the hobby has become more mainstream, which is good in a way. I think overall that's a good thing. Inevitably, though, as more people collect points and they get savvier in using those points, the airlines have had to close some of the loopholes and sort of, and I guess inevitably just the number of seats available. Even if the number of seats available is pretty much the same or even growing slightly, the number of people with points who want to redeem their points for those seats is much larger. So inevitably there's going to be issues with availability of award seats. That's not to say that there's not award seats out there. They just might not be available if you only have Qantas points, which is what the majority of Australians seem to collect. At the end of the day, I think the airlines, though, know how much people value their frequent flyer programs, and they know how much value those frequent flyer programs bring to their businesses. I mean, Qantas Loyalty makes, in some years, more money than the actual business of Qantas flying planes. And if you look over in the US, where that's a very mature market for the loyalty programs make much more money than the airlines pretty much every year. The loyalty programs are worth way more. In fact, the airline almost exists now just to add value to the loyalty program rather than the other way around, which is how it was originally designed. So the airlines don't want to kill their golden goose. They know that people need to see value in the frequent flyer programs in order for them to want to continue engaging, and they need people to be engaged in the programs in order to attract partners which they can sell points to, and for that cycle to continue. So it's not dead. There'll be new opportunities, and it's still a great game to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, I got into the game, I guess, after you, and I think I've adapted, I guess, somewhat. But no, it's been very lucrative for me as well. And so I guess from your time as AFF editor, would you have any tips or advice for anyone who's now trying to get into the travel hacking or award booking game?
Other than starting a decade ago, I guess. Well, I have a few sort of tips, and they're kind of a disjointed list, so I will go through them one by one. But I think the first thing, if I just think back about what I wish I knew when I was getting started with frequent flyer points, I mean, the first program I joined, as you might expect, growing up in Australia, was Qantas Frequent Flyer. I actually paid the joining fee, which I think at the time was $82.50. It's now $99 or something.
And I mean, that's now that'd be a rookie mistake, but
Absolutely.
I mean, at the time,
I mean, I just didn't know any
probably
better.
didn't know any better.
I'd never heard of
exactly.
I'd never heard of AFF before. This was in, I think, 2011 or 2000. No, it was 2009. I think I joined Qantas Frequent Flyer. I just thought that that's what you had to do, so I paid the joining fee. Obviously, now I know that there's so many free join links. Like you really, there's no reason you should have to do that. But that's probably one thing that I wish I knew right at the start when I started getting into points. I also wish that I'd realized sooner that there are other options other than just Qantas and Velocity. I mean, for the first years, I really only engaged in Qantas and Velocity, and then my mind was absolutely blown when I realized I think the first international program I really engaged with was actually Etihad Guest.
Oh.
No.
How the times have changed.
Well, yeah, at the time, a very good program. That's I've now basically cleared out my Etihad Guest account, and I really don't want anything to do with that program. The value is just not there anymore. But if you recall, I think Etihad Guest started a partnership with Flybuys, and you could earn points at Coles. Take advantage of the bonus point offers at Coles, and transfer them to Etihad Guest. And at the time, you could redeem at very, very reasonable redemption rates on Virgin Australia, as well as other airlines. Like I redeemed Etihad Guest miles on Air Serbia, on Czech Airlines when they existed, and the rates were very reasonable. That program has changed. I also engaged quite early, around the same time, with American Airlines, and started to buy American Airlines Advantage miles to redeem them on Qantas Trans-Tasman flights, which worked out to be a great discount. And yeah, I remember my mind being blown when I realized how few Advantage miles it was going to cost me to fly from New Zealand to Western Australia in business class, and how low the taxes were, because American Airlines is not passing on the Qantas carrier charges. So yeah, and having access to sort of flexible credit card points, or access to other international frequent flyer programs, opens up so many more opportunities. And I mean, we talked last episode about, or 2 episodes ago, I should say, about SkyTeam. And about how much availability SkyTeam has. So if you're having trouble finding business class or reward seats to Asia using Qantas points or Velocity points, maybe consider using a different program which does have access to that availability. I think as well, one of the things I learned fairly on into my, I guess, travel career was I would get anxious about things which were outside of my control. And I started to realize that there's no point worrying about things that I can't control. Like, for example, the weather. I got stuck in Washington, DC when I was 18 in a big snowstorm. All of the flights out of there were canceled. I had a booking on American Airlines. They canceled everything, and the airport was shut basically. It's like, I did what I could, and then once I'd exhausted my options, it's like, well, why worry? There's no point. I can't do anything.
Yeah, there's literally nothing you can do.
I mean, that said, if there is something that you can do, advocate for yourself and get it done. But if you've tried that and there really is nothing else, then just there's no point worrying about these kinds of things. When booking flights, I've started to realize, as I've done a lot of travel and a lot of long haul travel and between different time zones as well, how much I value sleep. When I book flights, I really think about, when am I going to have a chance to sleep? And I don't just go for the cheapest option. Like, I'll look at the schedule and I'll realize that if it's going to be 2:00 in the morning in my time, in whatever time zone my body clock is on, when this flight departs, maybe I shouldn't book that flight, or maybe not in economy. And I've started to, stop overnight if that means getting a sleep in a bed rather than flying straight through just because it's the quickest, travel duration. if I'm flying, for example, from Australia to Europe in economy, you can leave. Just for example, there's a lot of flights through the Middle East that leave Australia sort of mid to late afternoon. You get to Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Qatar, wherever at about midnight, and then you can continue onwards to Europe at 2 o'clock in the morning. You arrive in Europe at about 6 in the morning. Why would I do that when instead I could get off the plane at midnight, sleep in a real bed in the transit hotel overnight, and then take the mid morning or the afternoon departure to Europe the next day and arrive in Europe in the afternoon when I can actually check into my hotel at the destination? Just things like that. I really, really think about that. And I've started to realize, like, as you fly more and more, you get status and you have access to lounges, there's often free alcohol available as well. And I've started to become a lot better at turning down free alcohol and not just taking a glass of champagne because it's available and it's free. There is the real consequences on your health.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to take it to begin with. I'm just going to point that one out.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I would, many years ago, I would go to the lounge and there's free wine available. I should take one. It's free. And I've started to realize that there is a downside to doing that. It does affect your sleep as well if you're drinking late at night. But there's other podcasts where you can learn more about that. I think the other thing that I've really started to take advantage of is buying positioning flights to places from where airfares are much cheaper. So, like, you can buy a business class ticket, for example, from Australia to Europe, and it might be $10,000. I mean, we talked about the pricing just before. Sri Lankan Airlines might be a bit cheaper, but it's not going to be cheap per se. Or you can buy a cheap positioning flight to somewhere in Southeast Asia, stop over for a day or two, break up the trip, and then fly business class from there. And it's less than half the price, maybe even a quarter of the price for a business class ticket from there. So I guess I'm not afraid to, like, split up the trip and take advantage of different market pricing. And and I guess what this kind of comes down to is I think the journey is very important, and it's not just about the destination. So thinking about how you're going to be feeling on the trip, and not just trying to get somewhere quickly for the sake of it. Actually taking the time to enjoy it and make it as stress free and comfortable as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I see people trying to get into this game, especially for the long haul business class flights, often to Europe or the US, for example, when you really need the comfort, and they get into the game. And I don't think social media helps this, but they get sold on promises of, like, business class luxury, and they assume that it's going to be exactly like flying with a cash fare, but you're just saving a whole bunch of money because you use points. And I think the number one takeaway is that it's not all like social media. I mean, you probably can apply that to other things beyond travel hacking, but being flexible, I think, is one thing that you highlighted, especially with, like, positioning flights or maybe taking an extra day to stop over. I think that's really crucial nowadays, especially since availability out of Australia, as well as cash fares. Availability is very tight. Cash fares are very expensive out of Australia. You've got to make it work for you.
Absolutely. And when you're redeeming points, actually think about what value you're getting. Like, compare the cost of your reward ticket to a cash fare. Are you actually getting good value? I mean, we talked at the start of this podcast about how using Qantas points to get business class to Europe is actually not really good value anymore on the airlines that have availability compared to even just using them on domestic flights. And of course, if you use your points instead for domestic flights, and then you can use the money that you've saved by not paying for those domestic flights to actually buy whatever you actually want to book, and not be bound by award availability for your long haul trips. Things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all good advice. And you mentioned as well that the AFF community also is a very, very good space for advice and tips, tricks, little hacks. I guess, is that what makes the AFF community great, or is there other things as well that just really makes the community such a great place to be around?
Yeah, I mean, it is a fantastic community. If you've been to an AFF event, you'll know this. The people who come to these events and post on the forum are so engaged and knowledgeable and willing to share that knowledge. It's definitely made a positive contribution to my own life. I've learned a lot from other people on the forum, and hopefully I've been able to impart a bit of knowledge as well on the community. And I'm proud that AFF has also led to some real positive changes in airlines and in general. Like I remember we kind of there was a whole lot of threads that came up around sort of the late 2010s, 2017, 2018 about like, oh my goodness, the carrier charges are so high on Qantas, and Qantas was not really forthcoming on the what the carrier charges actually were. They still do not publish anywhere a list of the carrier charges. So AFF did this. We published a list of them, and we put out a press release and said, hey, do you know that this is what you're paying when you redeem a Qantas flight? And we even found some examples where the carrier charges on some redemptions were more than the cash ticket. And we just kind of highlighted the kind of how poor the value had become on some of these redemptions. And Qantas followed that up not too much time later by actually dropping their carrier charges. Unfortunately, some of those have come back up now, so that's a shame. But like that's one example. And I remember there was so many threads in sort of the post-COVID era about people redeeming their Qantas points for reward seats on partner airlines, and then those tickets were getting just cancelled. So there would be people that would call up the call center to change a flight. The call center would make a mistake, and then they would cancel the whole ticket by accident. And then there'd be so many other cases where Qantas just wasn't ticketing or reticketing the bookings correctly. They would fall off, and then the partner airline would cancel the reservations. And some of these people were turning up at the airport thinking they had a flight, and they didn't. They were getting denied boarding because there was no ticket. And even people who realized what was happening were having so much trouble getting the flights reinstated by Qantas. Like it was a joke actually how bad this was. And AFF worked with Qantas to try and fix this. So we worked with Qantas to get an email like inbox set up so that when people had ticketing issues, they had a point of contact that they could actually get in touch with, and they would actually fix it. We also worked with Qantas on getting solutions to this so that it wouldn't happen in the first place. There was still a few after this that fell through the cracks, but Qantas has definitely done a good job of fixing most of those issues now. I'm proud as well of our point valuations. I think this is something that we talked about this at the start. Like Wilson, you helped obviously with setting this up. This is something that will continue to keep the frequent flyer programs honest. If the frequent flyer programs become less valuable, if they increase their prices or whatever, the valuations are going to pick this up, and it'll be transparent for everyone to see that. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I guess the community does a fantastic job of that. And I guess from my point of view, I think that's such a cool aspect and we know that airline executives and the people are reading the forum. And for a community to have that much power, and I think, Matt, you can't sell yourself short here. You've been instrumental in giving the community that power by giving it a voice as editor over such a long time. But the fact that airlines are, at the very least, are seeing people's feedback on a community forum is a fantastic outcome.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of AFF members realize how far and wide their forum posts are going. I mean, this can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes people post, mistake fares or loopholes, and the wrong person sees it and closes it down. So that is always a risk. On the other hand, like you'd be surprised. Like I went into an airline office one afternoon, and about half the office had AFF open. They're just browsing the forum, looking at people's posts about that airline, and what are people? They were really reading like, what are people saying about us today? People do actually take notice of the feedback on the forum, and they really care. It's honest, real time, unfiltered feedback, and it's people can find out what their customers really think by reading AFF. And so I think if you're posting on the forum and even if it's a complaint, you've identified some sort of issue, your post has more power than you might realize, because it might actually lead to getting the problem fixed.
Yeah, I mean, that is really cool. And so I guess looking back over the last 11 years, is there one point that you're, I guess, most proud of as AFF editor?
I'm going to have to nominate two. I'm sorry. One of the things I am proud of is there was a small group of us during the COVID pandemic and during the post-COVID era that were trying to keep the airlines and, I mean, Qantas was probably the main one, but all of the industry honest. And I think AFF did a pretty good job of that. And someone at Qantas actually thanked me recently for having kept the airline honest during COVID. I'm sure they weren't too happy about AFF's feedback and my coverage at the time, but I think it was an important thing that we did. But the thing I'm most proud of is just having helped many people to get more out of their travels and improve their quality of life as a result. And one of the nicest things an AFF member has said to me was last week. Someone said to me that because of me and because of AFF, her husband and herself have been able to fly business class to Europe multiple times despite having limited means, and that it's made a trip for them was the trip that they do regularly to go and see family a hellish experience, made it into something that's comfortable and manageable and even sometimes enjoyable. So that's lovely. I'm really happy to have been able to help with that.
Yeah, I mean, getting those messages is fantastic, and it is in its essence what AFF is about. It is to enable people to have these experiences, and I mean, we see these experiences all the time. I guess with trip reports, people create these lovely, often very long reports of their travels.
Absolutely. I talked about this in the last episode, but the trip reports on AFF are fantastic. If you're an AFF member who's written a trip report, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love reading them. The rest of the community loves reading them. It's one of the best forums on AFF, and it's a great part of this community.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. And not only do you get a sense of like the journey from an individual perspective, you also get little tips and tricks how people book their flights and hotels and everything as well. And I guess for anyone looking forward, wanting to create content about travel or aviation or frequent flyer programs, there's obviously a lot of social media influencers nowadays. But is there any advice that you'd give to people wanting to make that jump and, like, I guess, record their travels?
Yeah, I get asked quite a lot, like what advice I would give to travel writers or people who want to make this their career. I think the number one tip that I can give to anyone who's creating content, even whether it's travel content or articles, if they're an influencer, whatever, is you need to provide value to your audience. Every single thing that I've written on AFF, I've been thinking about what is our audience going to get out of this? What value am I providing here? That and it's about giving. It sounds really cliche, and it's the same advice you give to business students. It's about giving the audience or the customer or whatever it may be what they want. I think as well, like I try to write as much original content rather than just copying and pasting press releases. I mean, obviously, you can get a lot of information about what's going on in the industry from press releases and from just reading other news outlets. But just repeating what you see elsewhere is not really adding a whole lot of value. And I've also found that more and more I'm taking things that airlines say or any company really with a bit of a pinch of salt. Sometimes I read a media release and it's like, well, the airline's saying this, but is it true? I'm not sure, so I maybe won't cover that. And as well, engaging with your audience is really important, and I think it's really important to be prepared to admit when you're wrong about something. I love it when we get comments on the forum pointing out, and sometimes it's as mundane as like, oh, you had a typo here, or you spelled this word wrong, or there's a full stop missing. And sometimes it's, I think you're wrong because of these reasons. And I love getting that kind of feedback. It means that the audience is engaged. They're thinking about what you have to say. And sometimes I am wrong about things, and I'll admit it and sometimes even update the content. And I always find it amusing when there's comments from some people saying that I was too easy on an airline, and then comments from others saying I was too hard on an airline, or when when an airline contacts me and says like, oh, we think this is too harsh, and then the community is saying you were too easy on them. When that's the case, I know that I've got the balance about right. You're not going to please everyone. You never will please everyone. I mean, you need to have a bit thick skin. Sometimes you'll get comments on social media on your content, which is not helpful at all. And it's just like, oh, you're an idiot or something. I mean, okay, fine. It can happen. But yeah, if you're passionate though about what you're writing about or about the content you're creating, you're going to be 100 times better than someone who's just doing it as a job to earn money. I mean, I've never really thought of, okay, AFF has been my job for more than a decade. It's been my full-time job for many years. but I'm doing it because I have been doing it because I'm really passionate about this industry, and I've enjoyed what I'm doing, and that's so much more important, at least to me, than just doing a job to turn up and go home.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Everyone wants a job that they can show up and be happy. A job that's a passion is quite a good outcome, isn't it?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you have to be true to yourself. I mean, I'm not going to write something that I don't believe in, and I think that hopefully comes across in what I'm writing. But yeah, if this, by the way, if this sounds like a job that you would love to do, if you're passionate about aviation and frequent flyer programs, you want to be able to teach others about it, and you enjoy creating content, feel free to get in touch as well.
So, I mean, all good things must come to an end eventually, and obviously we're very sad to see you go, but what's in store for next year and beyond?
Yeah, like AFF has been this has been a great job. AFF is a great community. I've really enjoyed being part of this, and this has been a great job for many years. It's time for a new challenge for me. I want to learn something completely different. I want to feel like I'm really being challenged again. So I'm a bit tired, to be honest. So I'm going to take a few months off. I will still most likely do a bit of freelance writing for AFF next year, at least for the first few months. So you might still see some of my articles on the website, and I'm looking forward to that. But I'm looking for a career change, and look, I can't say anything just yet, but most likely you'll see me popping up at an airline somewhere, I reckon.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's always, well, it's a very logical step for you. But no, we're super excited to see where you go, and obviously we're supporting you. And a massive thanks again, because AFF would not be where it is without your efforts.
And thank you for that, and thank you, Wilson, for co-hosting this podcast with me over the last year, and doing a great job on the forum as well. And thank you also to all of the AFF members who've tuned into this podcast, and just everyone who's contributed to help make AFF what it is. AFF is the sum of its parts, and the biggest part is the community. The community is excellent. So, as I said before, it's so engaged, and people are really, really friendly and willing to help each other. So without that, AFF is nothing. So thank you very much to everyone who's been a part of that, and to everyone else as well who's reached out to send their well wishes to me as well.
Unfortunately, with Matt moving on, this podcast won't continue in the foreseeable future. But to continue staying up to date with the latest airline and frequent flyer program developments, you can, of course, subscribe to the Frequent Flyer Gazette. Also, visit the AFF forum regularly. Hit watch on your favorite threads and forums to stay up to date on those particular threads and forums. You can also follow Australian Frequent Flyer on both Facebook and Instagram. And if you're a gold or platinum member, you can also tune into AFS webinars. Also, you might consider coming along to one of our masterclasses next year. Stay tuned for more information there. Lastly, you could also tune into the Point Hacks podcast either on YouTube or on your preferred podcasting platform if you prefer the audio version for some frequent flyer developments as well. Thanks so much to everyone for listening to this podcast and for your support. Happy flying!
Thanks, Wilson. Thanks, everyone, and bye for now.